Mary Magdalene and the Forbidden Grail, the mystery the Templars tried to hide. They told you the Holy Grail was a cup, a relic, a piece of dusty history locked away in some cathedral or guarded by secret societies in ancient armor. But what if that's the greatest cover-up of all time? What if the real Grail was never meant to be found because it was never an object to begin with? Let's talk about Mary Magdalene, the woman the church tried to silence, rewrite, and reduce to a side character in the world's most powerful story. What if she wasn't just a disciple, but the keeper of a forbidden secret? A secret tied to the bloodline of Jesus, the divine feminine, and the very essence of spiritual freedom. It's a theory so explosive the Knights Templar may have died protecting it, and the church nearly erased it from history. This isn't just about ancient scrolls or conspiracy theories. It's about what's been hidden from you and why. Because if the Gnostic Gospels were right, if the Sangreal is real, then everything changes. Your faith, your identity, your understanding of spirituality. And that's exactly why this mystery still matters right now. In the next few minutes, you'll uncover the threads that connect Templars, sacred chalices, religious persecution, and the truth the church has feared for centuries. So lean in, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, ready to find out what's really been kept in the shadows. Most people picture the Holy Grail as some dusty old cup, right? A relic tucked away in a vault, maybe even glowing with divine energy. But what if that image, engraved in our minds by paintings, legends, and even Hollywood, is nothing more than clever misdirection? Not to say it's entirely false, but perhaps it's the surface of something far deeper. A sacred chalice may have never been about the object, but rather about what it represents. And trust me, the real treasure, it's way harder to find than any medieval cup. Think about this. Why would so many civilizations obsess over vessels if it were just about drinking wine? The power behind the Grail narrative could lie in what it symbolizes, the containment of something holy, divine, or forbidden. Even the Bible doesn't give us a detailed description of the cup used at the Last Supper. That's curious, isn't it? It's as if the object was never the focus. What if the real cup was something or someone living, someone who carried the essence of Jesus' legacy? Over time, the church played a major role in shaping what the masses believed. It's no secret that symbols and stories were edited, censored, and manipulated to maintain control. So the sacred chalice being pushed as a literal object. Maybe that was part of a narrative to keep our eyes off something far more powerful. Like hiding a lamp under a basket, Matthew 5:15. The light remains, but it's concealed, perhaps for protection or perhaps for control. And here's the twist. What if the Grail was never lost? What if it simply became invisible in plain sight, buried under centuries of symbolism, religious persecution, and fear of revealing the true Sangreal? You see, once we let go of the image of a golden goblet, a new mystery starts to form. And it all begins to point towards someone history tried to silence. You've probably heard Mary Magdalene labeled as a repentant sinner, right? That narrative was hammered into history for centuries. But what if that image was engineered to hide her real significance? There's a growing school of thought, backed by ancient texts and historical patterns, that connects her, not a golden cup, to the Holy Grail itself. And once you look past the noise, it makes chilling sense. A woman close to Jesus, a woman entrusted with sacred truths, a woman erased from the spotlight intentionally. Now enter the Templars, those iconic warriors in white mantles, often seen as guardians of divine relics. But they were more than just crusaders with swords. Many historians believe they were custodians of forbidden knowledge, protectors of secrets the church wanted buried. Think of them as the original keepers of encrypted files, only they're hard. Drives were scrolls, symbols, and perhaps even living descendants. What were they defending so fiercely? Maybe not a relic, but a revelation. Some stories suggest the Templars discovered something explosive during their time in Jerusalem. And guess what? That something might have pointed to Mary Magdalene not just as a disciple, but as the vessel of divine truth, literally and symbolically. Could she have carried Jesus' legacy in a way no one dared to admit? And if so, wouldn't hiding that truth be the ultimate form of control? That would explain the violent backlash the Templars faced, accusations of heresy, burnings at the stake. Their sudden dismantling wasn't just about politics, it was about silence. About burying a link between Mary Magdalene, the divine feminine principle, and the real meaning of the Grail. But of course, secrets like these have a funny way of surviving. Whispers passed down, hidden symbols etched in stone, and alternative gospels preserved by the few who dared to remember. Now here's where things get really interesting. Have you ever noticed how Holy Grail in old texts is sometimes written as San Grail? But if you split the words differently, it becomes Sang Real, French for royal blood. That tiny shift changes everything. It suggests the Grail isn't a thing at all. It's a lineage, not a relic to be stored in a vault, but a bloodline to be preserved, protected, and maybe even feared. This is the theory that shakes the foundations of traditional Christianity. If Jesus had a child and Mary Magdalene was the mother, then the Grail becomes her the bearer of the Sang Real. It reframes the idea of salvation from a spiritual inheritance to a literal flesh and blood continuation. It's wild, right? But that's exactly why this theory was considered heretical. Because if true, it would mean the divine didn't just ascend, it remained, hidden within a lineage that could still exist today. That would also explain the obsession with genealogies in ancient texts. The Gospel of Matthew, for instance, opens with a long family line. Why? Because to the Jewish people, lineage was everything. Now imagine if someone today could prove they were part of that line. Think about the power that would carry, not just spiritually, but politically, culturally, even economically. And perhaps that's why so many have tried to erase that possibility altogether. So what does this mean for the Grail hunters, the scholars, the seekers? Maybe the real quest isn't about tracking down a golden artifact. It's about uncovering a truth that was buried for protection, a truth encoded in symbols, veiled in allegories, and kept alive by those willing to risk everything. But if the Grail is flesh, not stone, then what else have we misunderstood about divine purpose? And who else might history have underestimated? Let's pause and really think about something. Why is the feminine so absent in the official telling of sacred history? It's almost like someone went out of their way to erase it. Now, if the Holy Grail isn't a literal cup but a metaphor, a symbol of divine creation, nurturing wisdom, then it makes perfect sense that it would point to the divine feminine principle, that powerful sacred force we've been taught to ignore or fear. Yeah, that's what might have been hidden in plain sight. Mary Magdalene, often reduced to the sinner, suddenly becomes more than just a character. She becomes a symbol, a representation of a wisdom that balances the masculine energy traditionally attributed to God. Think of the Grail as a womb, not biologically but symbolically, the source of life, the vessel of transformation, the space where the divine and human meet. And yet, history has systematically shut that door, locking it behind doctrines, dogma, and centuries of spiritual repression. You can see this pattern across cultures. When the divine feminine is suppressed, imbalance follows. In Gnostic thought, Sophia, the embodiment of wisdom, is a divine feminine figure, but her voice was silenced when the Gnostic Gospels were banned. The same pattern plays out in our everyday world. Ever notice how traits like intuition, empathy, and receptivity are undervalued in modern systems of power? That's no accident. It's a mirror of a spiritual imbalance that started long ago. Want to reconnect with that forgotten half of the divine? Start simple. Read the Gnostic Gospels, especially the Gospel of Mary. Look into the lives of spiritual women who carried wisdom across centuries, from mystics like Hildegard of Bingen to everyday healers your history books forgot. The Grail might not be something to find, but something to restore. And once you open that door, the voices of the past begin to whisper secrets the Church worked hard to silence. Here's where things start to crack wide open. Buried beneath centuries of dust and dogma, the Gnostic Gospels tell a radically different story, one where Mary Magdalene isn't a footnote but a pillar. In the Gospel of Mary, she's portrayed not just as a devoted follower, but as someone Jesus confided in more than the male disciples. That's right, she's not weeping in a corner. She's leading, teaching, challenging. No wonder the early Church scrambled to hide these texts. Take the scene after the resurrection. According to canonical Gospels, Mary Magdalene is the first to see the risen Christ. But in the Gnostic texts, the moment takes on a deeper, even mystical weight. She receives knowledge directly from Jesus, hidden knowledge, and when she shares it with the other disciples, what do? Doubt her, discredit her. Sound familiar? That tension between revealed truth and institutional control isn't ancient history, it's an ongoing battle. Think about it. If the Church had officially acknowledged her role, we might have grown up with a very different spiritual narrative, one where women weren't just witnesses to divine events, but bearers of divine authority. The implications are huge. It would reframe spiritual leadership, challenge patriarchal traditions, and open up new paths to understanding grace, wisdom, and even salvation itself. Want to explore this on your own? Start with the Nag Hammadi Library, those unearthed scrolls from Egypt that flipped everything on its head. Read the Gospel of Thomas, Philip, Mary. Question what you were taught to accept without a second thought. Because if Mary Magdalene was the one chosen to carry a truth too dangerous for her time, maybe it's up to us to listen now, when the world just might be ready. You ever get that feeling like some truths are just everywhere, quietly repeating across time and culture? Sacred vessels, the idea of a cup, bowl, or chalice that holds divine essence, aren't just Christian lore. The Holy Grail might be the West's most famous version. But if you zoom out, civilizations across the globe seem to echo the same theme. It's like humanity has always known there's something powerful about a vessel that holds more than just wine or oil. Something. Holy, take the Hindu Amrita Kalasha, a pot containing the nectar of immortality, or the Celtic cauldron of Dagda, which never runs empty and can heal any wound. Even in Greek mythology, the horn of plenty is a symbol of endless blessings. These vessels aren't about the physical object. They're about what they contain: wisdom, life, divine favor. It's not hard to see the parallel. Something sacred, hidden, and accessible only to the worthy. Sounds a lot like the Grail legend, doesn't it? Now here's the kicker. Why would so many cultures that never crossed paths all come up with the same symbol? Maybe because the chalice represents more than history. Maybe it taps into something spiritual, something embedded deep in human consciousness. A longing to reconnect with the sacred, to drink from a source that reminds us who we really are. And maybe, just maybe, every myth is a coded invitation to search for that source. Not out there, but within. So if you're serious about your spiritual growth, consider studying myths beyond your own background. Look into the Norse Well of Urd or the Japanese Sacred Mirror. Ask yourself, why were these objects always hidden, protected, or lost? Could it be that the search for the sacred vessel is actually a metaphor for uncovering a truth we've been conditioned to forget? And if so, who's been keeping that truth from us? Let's flip the script for a second. What if the Holy Grail the Templars guarded wasn't a cup hidden in a dusty crypt, but a truth so dangerous it had to be buried beneath symbols and silence? The idea that the Templars held some physical relic has captivated imaginations for centuries. But the real treasure, It might have been forbidden knowledge, truths about Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and the divine feminine that would have unraveled the church's authority overnight. The Templars weren't just warriors in shining armor. They were deeply spiritual men, scholars, mystics. Some believe they had access to ancient scrolls, maybe even Gnostic texts smuggled out of the Holy Land. Imagine them reading about a sangreal, not a royal cup, but a royal bloodline, or uncovering rituals that connected directly to God without needing priests or cathedrals. That's the kind of knowledge you don't guard with swords, unless it threatens an empire, and history backs this up. Why else would the church go from blessing the Templars to burning them alive? Their sudden downfall wasn't about money or heresy, it was about control. If they really held secrets that pointed to Jesus' bloodline, or taught that the sacred is within each of us, not locked in rituals and dogma that would shake the very foundations of institutional religion. No wonder their secrets had to disappear. Or did they? Want to see how this affects your life today? Ask yourself where your beliefs come from, who taught you what's holy, who benefits when you feel unworthy of divine connection. Reclaim your curiosity, read beyond what's approved. The Templars may be gone, but the echoes of their secrets still hum beneath the surface, waiting for those brave enough to listen. And speaking of hidden truths, what if Mary Magdalene wasn't just part of the story, but the key to it? So, now that you've glimpsed what might really lie behind the veil of tradition, the forbidden secret, the whispers of the sangreal, the hidden knowledge once guarded by the Templars, what will you do with it? Are you willing to keep asking the questions others fear? Are you ready to challenge the version of history you've been handed and explore a deeper, richer, more spiritually liberating truth? Because if the Holy Grail isn't a cup, but a symbol of the divine feminine, of Jesus' bloodline, of sacred truths buried under centuries of control, then the real treasure isn't something you can hold. It's something you can become. And friend, the first step to uncovering it is daring to look where others won't. So tell me, what if Mary Magdalene was the real key? What if the knowledge they tried to suppress was exactly what you've been needing to reconnect with your own divine purpose? Would you still let that stay hidden? Or would you rise and reclaim it? If this awakens something in you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel, tap the bell, and join a community that's not afraid to explore the mysteries the world tried to bury. Because this is only the beginning, and there's so much more truth to uncover together.